Welcome to May's Tech of the Month. This month we're here at the Cycle Show and we are going to be going inside and finding all the latest and greatest tech. Do be sure to stay tuned for a Garmin competition later in the video, but first up, we better head inside.
These are the Muoverti bikes, which means keep on moving in Italian. We've seen them at a couple of other trade shows. It's actually the first time I've seen them in the flesh, and they're pretty exciting. They let you really move around the bike, which is something you don't get on a lot of indoor training experiences.
That's it. So, I mean, the way they're doing it is they've got some springs at the bottom which keep you upright, and it also allows you to steer as well. So, over here, you can see that Stefan is steering away, but he is also successfully crashing as well. Now, these bikes are in their prototype stage at the moment, and they're due to be coming onto the market in the next couple of years.
Also, they do connect up via Bluetooth to loads of different apps. So today we've tried, obviously, Zwift. We've got Stefan on Descenders, but we also had to go on something that felt a little bit like a childhood game where you're just running around like looking to scoop up various different prizes, and you could shoot and so on. So the idea is that they'll appeal to loads of a really wide audience.
You do have a power meter in the unit itself, and they say it's plus minus 1% of accuracy, so basically what you'd expect. However, there is no flywheel. It's completely electronically controlled, and that's how they've then been able to incorporate brakes and gear shifting into it as well. So we'll let these guys carry on cycling away. Let us know down in the comments if you think this is something you'd be interested in trying, but I think we're going to head off somewhere else now.
So this might look like a pylon on two wheels, but it's actually a collaboration between Canyon and Bike.de, a German bike magazine, to produce a bike that is completely sustainable, made from sustainable materials using sustainable processes, to highlight that what the bike industry does at the moment is not very sustainable. So what they did is they've basically got a load of recycled aluminium, pulverized it into aluminium powder, and 3D printed this into a frame that really looks like something that we have never really seen before. Now, the reason that it looks like this, because it's made of sort of all these little struts, is that you can't 3D print a tube, so you've got to just 3D print a lot of solid pieces and join them together. So the weight is about 2 kilos, which is not too heavy, but really it's not light compared to a carbon bike, but considering it's made from solid pieces of aluminium, then it's not too bad at all. And although we're not really supposed to mess around with this bike, if you just lift it up like that, you can see that it's not really very heavy at all. So we asked Canyon whether this could be the future of bike production, and well, they said who knows, watch this space, as they would do, but at the moment this is a prototype, and this is actually the first time that it's been seen in public, a world premiere.
So we've come over to New Motion Labs and they've got some pretty cool chain tech here. Now, Simon, talk us through it, because it looks like there's some missing links.
Yeah, there are some missing links, in a good way though, and it looks pretty nice as well. So what they've done here is they're going to basically, enduro cargo means it's as it says, a stronger, longer lasting drivetrain, and the system means that there's less wear on the chain for e-cargo bikes like this, which is what it's aimed at, but also the stronger chain means that it has a much higher braking load than a conventional chain.
So how much extra life could we expect to see from one of their chains?
Okay, so they're saying that you're going to get 10 to 15,000 kilometers per chain.
So what are the chain rings made out of?
Okay, they're made of stainless steel,
okay.
And they come from Czechoslovakia back here. Okay. And you can see, check that out. It's got a lot of heft to it. You can just tell by lifting that up, looking at it, feeling it.
It's a thick chain ring as well.
Yeah.
That's really thick.
It's got a coating on it as well to make it even harder.
Wow, okay.
So that is going to last a long time. So
I mean, it does look like as well with the bike, they are targeting that e-cargo bike market, and I'm assuming that is because you can get a higher load on the chain.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the braking load of a normal chain is something like 800 to 1,000 kilograms.
Okay.
But with this chain, with the New Motion Labs Enduro cargo chain, they're saying up to 1,250 kilos braking
Wow.
load, so
Okay.
quite a bit more.
That is quite a bit more.
Yeah, they're saying that with a cargo bike, if it breaks down, if the chain snaps, when it's carrying a heavy load like this laundry here, for example, you're stuck in the middle of town or wherever, you've got to call out a mobile mechanic, you've got to get the bike picked up, and the cost is going to go into the sort of hundreds of pounds probably.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess with one of these as well, they are, I mean, that's a pretty robust chain actually, and the gaps between them are really quite small. And it looks like as well, this is also made out of steel, so I mean, in terms of a strong chain, that's pretty robust.
And it looks to me as if it's already being used by this courier company in Oxford called Oxwash, who deliver laundry. They've already got some customers. These are like guinea pigs as well. They're trialing the bikes with these. They're keeping an eye on the chain wear, keeping an eye on how it's going with this company. And they're talking about licensing the technology as well as doing OEM with it. So you could actually buy an e-cargo bike that's fitted with a new Motion Labs Enduro cargo system.
There we go.
And that's where it's going.
Interesting stuff then from New Motion Labs. So we've jumped outside with the Hon Bike. Now, there's something pretty special about the Hon Bike. Stefan, what is that?
And so it's quite neat for the drivetrain. It's using a drive shaft, and so we've seen like with ceramic speed, the drive shaft is external and it's using bearings. It's got teeth that come mesh into each other, but the really neat thing about this is that it's completely internally sealed inside that shaft that you're seeing on the left-hand side. And so the guys at Hon Bike reckon that you can go 40,000 kilometers. In fact, they've only tested it up to 40,000 kilometers and it hasn't failed at that point. And so like potentially the longevity is even longer than that. What's quite neat is that the system is meant to be fully modular, and so if you do manage to damage it somehow in some way, like you can just have the unit taken out and then swap a fresh one back in. And so it's really quite neat, and especially low maintenance. There's nothing you need to touch about it in your sort of general servicing. Literally you should be able to just get on and ride with the system. So really nice and low maintenance.
Now this is an e-bike. What kind of range are we getting out of the battery?
And so it's not mega range. They're like trying to focus on like lighter weight and having something that's a bit more maneuverable, like taking it on a train, sort of like mixed transport. And so the range they put it about 20 miles. The battery itself is 300 watt hours, and so that kind of like gives you an idea that it's on the lower end of things. Like larger e-bikes, utility big e-bikes, they'd be going up to like 600 watt hours, maybe even 700 watt hours, some of them.
And
so it's not a long way range.
It's for a city rider,
exactly,
isn't it?
city use. And then with that you've got the its folding capabilities, and so folds in the middle, the handlebar comes down. It doesn't go like neat and tiny like a Brompton, but
there's some other funky things I can see about this though. I mean, that saddle, it's a bit of an odd shape.
And it's missing its nose, isn't it?
It is missing its nose, that's the
good
thing.
reasoning behind it though. Like they say about that, the nose of a saddle, when you're sort of like getting on with like a dress, like that can get caught, and it's just something to sort of like, hook your leg over when you're getting on and off. Getting rid of that should make getting on the bike, and to be fair, like riding around, it does do that. It does make it like that bit easier.
And actually getting onto the seat post, this is as high as it goes. Now, they say that it's going to be suitable for anyone who's up to 190 centimetres, but you're 177 and you were already finding that your legs are bending.
So a little bit high. I mean, like, I reckon somebody 190, like, you can ride around town, like, on it potentially, but even me, like 177, it doesn't go high enough for like a long distance ride, but I'll be perfectly happy on it, riding about just casually, like when you're wearing like jeans, that kind of thing.
Sure. Well, I think the main and the most interesting thing about this bike really is that drive shaft. That's kind of the flagship feature of this bike, and it's quite interesting to see this technology now being incorporated on a bike. The question really is, how's this going to go forwards? And I guess, are other bike companies going to start taking this on?
So I'm here with the Enve custom carbon frame. This bike actually came out a year ago in March 21, but this is the first time I've seen one. And the reason for that is that the demand, according to Saddleback, the distributor, has just been so high, they've not really got any to the UK. This is the only one in the UK. They're made in Enve's factory in Utah at the moment. What Enve has done differently is provided a little bit of a hybrid between a fully custom carbon frame and off-the-peg frames. So they provide what they call custom fit. The idea is that they have two geometries, one is race and one is gravel, and you can specify either by bike fit dimensions or by telling them what your current frame is, and they'll tell you what the frame dimension should be. Each of those tubes will be designed to suit your body, but it will fit a certain geometry. And I did ask Saddleback, well, why is that? Because surely if you can make a fully custom carbon frame, you can use whatever dimensions you want. And they very honestly have said that, to be honest, sometimes people don't get it exactly right. You know, not all of us are made to be bike designers, and there might be a reason for that. And so the idea is to keep people within a certain parameter of how the bike is meant to ride. So we don't have people riding a race bike with their hands here and, you know, gravel bikes out here. Which I think it works, and it makes a lot of sense. And it also just makes custom geometry just that little bit more approachable for more people. But as I said, the demand has been huge. They take an entire day to make in the Utah factory. And so getting hold of one in the UK at the moment is looking like quite a feat.
Now you're all going to be incredibly glad to hear that the Tech of the Month competition has returned, and we have partnered up with Garmin and Tacx to give away some of the Tacx Motion plates. So head down into the description and you'll find out how to enter our competition. So for this month's Bike of the Month, we have got the Reilly Fusion, and this is made with a completely new construction method. Stefan, tell us a little bit more about how they've put it together.
And so the tubes, I might sort of notice that they look quite distinct to what you normally expect from a titanium bike. They've used hydroforming with titanium, and now hydroforming is a manufacturing technique that is most commonly done with aluminium, or like that's where you're going to have seen it on bikes generally previously. But Reilly have been able to use the hydroforming technique with the titanium, which has allowed them to have quite different, quite unique tube shapes that I haven't seen on a titanium bike before. And so particularly around the sort of a head tube, and also with the seat post, the seat tube junction with the top tube, you can see sort of like the curvature of the lug here. So,
and that's done by a casting method, isn't it? So the hydroforming was done on the tubes itself, but then all of the lugs, they were done by casting. So it's a bit of a different way of manufacturing titanium, but it's just super interesting, and it's meant that essentially you've got these near invisible weld lines. You can't really see where it joins up at all.
It's really quite interesting, sort of a contrast with a specialised alley that we saw a little bit earlier. And so with a similar sort of process, so this is a lug and this is a socket that goes into the bike, goes into the head tube here. But it's been sort of like filed down and sanded down to.
There's just no weld line there at all.
Exactly, it's absolutely smooth. Quite a contrast to the specialised alley with the great big welds that you saw around the top tube and the down tube.
And actually, the only places where you can see welds are where the seat stays join the seat tube and down at the bottom bracket cluster. But even then, because it's titanium, those welds are really small and they're incredibly neat. I've got to say, it's an incredibly beautiful looking bike, and I don't think there's any argument about how good this bike looks. However, there is that argument that actually a titanium bike, you do have traditional tube shapes, you do have lugs, whereas where this is going beyond that, you could be mistaking this for an aluminium bike, and I think that detracts slightly away from what a titanium bike really is. And you know, we've got some beautiful examples around us, but this is, I mean, it's definitely pushing the envelope. It definitely goes one further. But I mean, is this how we want titanium to evolve, or would you rather see them stay in their kind of classic shapes?
Yeah, well, if you painted up a bike, like, you could easily mistake it for aluminium. And equally, if you stripped off the paint and put like a nice clear lack on an aluminium bike, it wouldn't look too similar to this one. I mean, it's really quite interesting, and like pushing the titanium technology forwards. I mean, the intention for this bike is as an endurance bike, but also a bike that can be raced. It's sprightly enough and is responsive enough for racing. That's what I really want to see this bike being used for.
So true. And actually, when we were speaking to one of their reps here, they were saying that really their intended customer and the customer they expect people to have for this bike are kind of guys in their middle ages, and they do say that it can be used kind of more for those endurance rides. They would love to see people race them. I don't think people will race them. It's also just an incredibly beautiful bike to race. So I think we'll probably see these out on the lanes at Sportives doing those longer miles. Now, in keeping with modern times, everything is obviously integrated, and that means we've got integrated hoses going through the bars down the head tube. It's got a T47 bottom bracket, which has again allowed the cables and the hose to be routed to that rear brake all the way underneath and inside that frame, which is quite nice.
Yeah, it's not really an aesthetic that you typically associate with a titanium titanium bikes, normally the cables, yeah, you'd expect them to be external for most of their length, if not all of their length, with the cables running down the outside of a down tube, with the sort of like little braze-ons there for the cable stops. And so maybe we've become too used almost to the profile of like these carbon bikes with the fully internal cable routines. But for titanium, this is really quite a departure from what we tend to expect.
Now, to address the weight of the bike, which I'm sure is something you're all going to be asking about, the frame itself comes in at 1.7 kilos, and this build here comes in at 8.2 kilos. So it's actually respectively very light for a titanium bike. On to price, this build here, which is the Dura-Race build, that comes in at £10,500. Builds actually start at £7,500. They're taking orders right now, and deliveries are going to be anywhere from July onwards.
So we are evidently on the Hunt stand, and we have a set of Hunt's 7387 or 8387 new aerodynamicist wheels. Now I've probably told you the rim depth there, quite obviously. So there are two different options available, one with 8387 and one with 7387. Stefan has had a really good chat with Hunt to find out a little bit more about these wheels. So Stefan, what is the most exciting talking point on these?
Well, what's quite interesting is that the profile is quite different between the front and the rear. And so the rear for the two wheel set stays the same at the 87mm depth. But it's got more of a classical like V shape to it, and yeah, if you sort of like put your hand around it, so you can like really actually feel the difference between the two of them. And so with a higher speed that like envisaged for this wheel set, it's for like triathlons, TT, looking at going about 45 kilometers an hour, and it's coming in the two different depths, the 77 and the 83, and 34 millimeters wide. It's actually optimized around a 25 millimeter tire, and means the ratio between sort of the tire width and the rim width is actually pretty huge. I think it's the widest or the biggest difference that Hunt's yet done on the 48 Limitless wheel set. That's also about 34 millimeter wide rim width, but it's optimized around a 28 millimeter tire. And so this is really something like quite distinct, something quite new for Hunt with the front wheel set.
And Hunt has been just sort of gradually creeping in some new hubs on its wheels, right? What hubs have we got on these?
So yeah, we've got the Sprint hubs, and so this is the first wheel set that's launching with the Sprint hubs. They're using a slightly higher series of aluminium, which is it's got a higher tensile strength to weight ratio. And and so they reckon they can save about 25 grams on the hubs, which isn't a huge amount of weight, but like stepping forwards every time, like you're only going to progress.
And so pretty much finally, I think, what are the scores on the doors in terms of weight and certainly in terms of the RRP?
So in terms of weight on the shallower section, or the wheel set with the shallower front wheel, it's coming in at 1,776 grams, which like it's not a lightweight wheel set, but for the depth of the wheel, that is actually really quite impressive. And then for the deeper section front wheel, that's going up to 1,796 grams, and so a little bit heavier, as you would expect. So there's quite a few different price points with this wheel set, with the different depths that you can go at the front. And so it starts at 1,199 for the shallower section front wheel and the steel bearings, but it goes up to 1,549 for the deep section front wheel and with the ceramic bearings.
So there we have it. That is all the latest and greatest tech from the cycle show here in London. Let us know what your favourite thing was down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and I'll see you again very soon.